What would you do if God asked you to give up the very thing you loved most? Could you obey, even if it broke your heart? This is the story of a man who faced that unthinkable question, and it changed history forever. The man's name was Abraham. He was not young when his journey began. In fact, when God first called him, he was already 75 years old. God told Abraham to leave behind his homeland, his family, and everything he knew, and go to a land God would show him. And with that call came a promise that Abraham would become the father of a great nation. It was a strange promise, because Abraham and his wife Sarah had no children, and year after year their tent remained quiet, empty of a child's laughter. The years turned into decades, and still no son. Yet God kept repeating his promise. Your descendants will be as numerous as the stars in the sky. Finally, when Abraham was 100 years old and Sarah 90, the impossible happened. Sarah gave birth to a son. They named him Isaac, laughter, because their hearts were filled with joy and disbelief that God had done the impossible. Isaac was the child of promise, the one through whom Abraham's descendants would come. He was their miracle, their treasure, the light of their old age. And then came the test. One day, God spoke to Abraham. His voice, firm yet gentle, cut through the silence of the desert night. Abraham. Here I am, Abraham answered. Then came the words that must have shaken him to the core. Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you. Imagine that moment. The son he had waited a lifetime for, the child of promise God was now asking him to give him up. And not just give him up, but to sacrifice him with his own hands. The request seemed unbearable, even unthinkable. But Abraham knew God. He had walked with him for decades. He had seen him provide, protect, and fulfill his promises. And though he could not understand why God was asking this, he chose to trust him. Perhaps Abraham believed somehow, some way, that God would keep his promise through Isaac, even if it meant raising him from the dead. Early the next morning, Abraham rose before the sun. He saddled his donkey, split wood for the burnt offering, and took 2 of his servants with him, along with Isaac. Quietly they set out for the mountain. For 3 days they journeyed. 3 long days, with every step heavy on Abraham's heart. Every glance at Isaac must have pierced him with pain. The boy walked beside him, unaware of what lay ahead. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the mountain in the distance, Mount Moriah, rising stark against the sky. His heart must have pounded in his chest. He turned to his servants and said, "Stay here with the donkey while the boy and I go over there. We will worship, and then we will come back to you." Notice his words. We will come back to you. Even in this darkest moment, Abraham spoke with faith. He placed the wood for the burnt offering on Isaac's shoulders, and together they began the climb. The old man carried the fire and the knife, while the boy carried the weight of the wood symbolic of what was to come. As they walked, Isaac broke the silence. "Father, yes, my son, we have the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham's throat must have tightened. How could he explain? Yet with steady voice he replied, "God himself will provide the lamb, my son." And the two of them walked on. Finally they reached the place God had shown him. With trembling hands, Abraham built an altar of stones. He arranged the wood upon it. Then he turned to Isaac. We are not told how Isaac responded in that moment. He was young and stronger than his aged father. It could have resisted, could have run. Yet it seems he trusted his father as his father trusted God. Somehow he allowed himself to be bound. Abraham tied his son and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Picture the scene, the sky silent above them, the mountain wind whispering through the rocks, the crackle of fire in Abraham's hand, and Isaac, his beloved son, lying bound upon the altar. Abraham's heart must have been breaking. Yet he lifted the knife, raising his hand high. The moment stretched, unbearable, heaven and earth holding their breath. And then Abraham, Abraham. The voice of the angel of the Lord thundered from heaven. "Here I am," Abraham gasped. "Do not lay a hand on the boy," the voice said. "Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." Abraham's arm dropped. Relief and tears must have poured from his eyes as he untied Isaac. At that very moment, he looked up, and there in the thicket was a ram caught by its horns. God had provided a substitute. Abraham took the ram and sacrificed it instead of his son, and he named that place "The Lord Will Provide." For on the mountain of the Lord provision was seen. Then the angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time, and declared God as blessing. "Because you had done this and not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you. Your descendants will be as countless as the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore. And through your offspring all nations on earth will be blessed, because you have obeyed me." And so Abraham and Isaac descended the mountain together. The test was over. The promise remained, but the story does not end there. For centuries later, on another mountain not far from Moriah, another father would offer his son. This time, there would be no ram in the thicket, no voice to stop the hand. On the hill of Calvary, God did not withhold his only Son, but gave him up for us all. Jesus became the Lamb, the substitute, the sacrifice once and for all. Abraham's test points us forward to the ultimate sacrifice, God's love displayed on the cross. The lesson of this story is not simply about obedience, though obedience is important. It is about trust. Trusting God when the command seems impossible. Trusting Him when the road is painful. Trusting Him when the cost is great. Abraham trusted God, and his faith became the foundation of blessing for generations. And today, the same God who tested Abraham calls us to trust Him, maybe not with a sacrifice like Abraham's, but with our lives, our choices, our future, our hearts. Sometimes God asks us to lay down what we love most, not to take it from us, but to see if we will place Him first. And when we do, we discover that He is faithful, that He provides, and that He blesses beyond what we could imagine. So here's the question for you. If God asked you to lay down the thing you love most, would you trust Him?